Sometimes I think I came to photography by accident, not by intention. I mean, I didn't grow up thinking I want to be a photographer. But clearly photography was something kind of magical for me. It gave me this way of being in the world that allowed me to just wander, discover, try to decipher. So it became my language. It's become my language. In the first room of the exhibition, the early work is actually the first photographs. They're the first photographs I made in the boarding house that I lived in, and I was learning to use a 4x5 camera, which was very awkward. Well, it was difficult. I felt like I was trespassing. What was I doing? What's the purpose of this act of a photograph? This photograph is for whom? And so, for a long time, that's been the question motivating almost everything that I do. There were the girls down the block from where I live, and I still live in that neighborhood. So 40 years later, I'm still there. They've all gone, almost all of them. The only one left is Frankie.
There was no cell phone, there was no pager, there was nothing. You went under the window and you screamed up at the window for the person to come down. You know, I mean, it's just the way it was.
But yeah, it was this moment of capturing them in little moments of their lives over many, many, many years. It was, you know, again, it wasn't really an intentional project, so I didn't yet identify myself really, this is my life as a photographer. That really changed when I discovered the carnival strippers and really immersed myself in a very different way. I think I've always felt that it wasn't obvious initially, but it became, because I followed them for 3 summers, I had this sense there was something there that I could both capture and convey. And as you know, you hear the sound of the women, the sound of the managers, the clients. So I had this feeling it was very ethnographic in some ways. So you can feel that I'm moving around this place.
Now look, fellas, this is going to be the last outside appearance that the girls are going to make before we start this show. You see, we have some of your friends and neighbors on the inside waiting for the show to begin.
But I can see how place becomes a orientation, that I kind of find a way to set boundaries, and the boundaries could be as small as a boarding house or a refuge. But the idea of the girls' show was very strong, right from the beginning. And the relationship, the power relationship between the women performing, the power of the managers, the clients, this whole dynamic, sexual dynamic, that becomes the boundary of what I'm looking at. This second room is definitely a leap. It's a leap from leaving my country, leaving things that are relatively familiar, and going to Central America in the midst of an evolving social conflict. And you have to remember that this is the late 70s, we don't see so many images that we see today. So I was reading about a place that I couldn't see. So it pricked my mind, I suppose. I had no sense of where Nicaragua was, the history of the US government supporting the Somoza family. None of that until I began to learn that. I began to read about that. So I leaped. I got on a plane, I went, I didn't have an assignment. I had joined Magnum. There was another war, a Contra-war. There was forced conscription, hardship, and pain. Now I want to retrace my steps, to go back to the photos I took at the time of the insurrection and search for the people in them. What brought them to cross my path at the moment they did? What's happened? But then the Nicaragua book becomes this reference that I go back to 10 years later and bring back the photographs 25 years later. So it is this reference set of a kind of memory path. In some cases, they've seen the photographs, in some cases not, and you have no idea what has happened to them in 10 years. There's a weave of my memories and their memories, and I think it gets at this same question of what is a photograph? It's this juncture point, you know, between the photographer, the subject, the spectator, the people that see it from different angles. So there's this sense that you have to witness. It's the least you can do is document. It's not that that documentation is proof, as evidence. In some cases, it's been used by courts 20, 30 years later to indict people, to hold people accountable. It's clearly in this work, between that image, the work in El Salvador, the eye that documents again in the Anfal in Kurdistan, it's part of the linkage in this particular curation. In Kurdistan, for the first time, I'm following the news of refugees fleeing from northern Iraq and reading about 4,000 villages destroyed, not knowing what, again, there are no images to prove that that's what's happened. So the first work is along that line of evidential proof. So I go in, I document the villages and the mass graves, and then I think the metaphor I use at that time is really the sense of digging, that in the present, I can't show the past. So what has been motivating the Kurds that created the necessity for Saddam to destroy or attempt to destroy the culture or annihilate the culture? A Room of Their Own begins with an open commission to come to the Black Country, which is west of Birmingham in the northern part of England. Entering that refuge, I felt the stories all around me. You couldn't not look in a room and feel the presence of a woman who was recreating her life with the emptiness. So the room, the empty room, seemed to me to be the portrait that gave them presence. And that's one of the first photographs I made. When I make the photograph of myself, I think it's a perfect psychological portrait. I'm present, but I want to be invisible. And even today, I don't love to be on this side of the lens. I'd much rather be on the other side of the lens. I don't want to be looked at. I don't want this work to be about me. I want it to be about the worlds that I've tried to enter, tried to share, tried to convey. So I hope, I really do hope visitors can sort of get inside the body that's the archive that leads you into a life.